Hello everyone and welcome to another video on JavaScript programming. Kaushal this side from SimpliCode, and today we are going to discuss document object model traversing in JavaScript, or we can say the DOM traversing in JavaScript. Before we begin, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss an update from SimpliCode. So without any further delay, let's get started. Before we look at the DOM traversing in JavaScript, let's discuss another small yet interesting method in JavaScript, that is the querySelector method. This querySelector method in JavaScript helps the user to get the first element from the document with a particular query. As the name suggests, it will return the first element related to that query. Suppose we see here in the previous code, so we are using the previous code, the one which we used in the previous video, so we are going to use the same code. So we can see here we have an element with class left here, right? So this is a class left, and the element with class left is this div is here with class left. Fine. In fact, we have more than one element with class left, right? So this div also has the class left. Now, if we want to find the first element with class left, in that case, we can use the querySelector method. So it will return this div tag in the console, or wherever we want to print it, it will return this div tag there. So let's implement this in coding. So we'll go to the JavaScript file, and let's suppose we want to access a particular element, or we can say the first element with the class is left. Okay, so let's remove this and we'll write here var x is equal to document. It's quite similar to what we studied in the last video, like we did for forms and all. So what we have to do here is we have to write here x equals to document dot query selector, and then we have to pass the class name here. Instead of class name, we can pass the element name as well, we can pass the ID as well. So in this particular case, we are going to pass the class name. So we'll write here dot left. So this is our class name, and then we'll print this x on the console. So we'll write here console.log and we'll print x here. So the syntax is quite simple for the querySelector method. Let's save it and check the output. So you can see here that in the output we have null here, right? So it may happen to some of you guys that it will show null here in the console. Every one of you or me doesn't need to have to go through it. Like, it happens mostly when we try to access the element before the document object model is ready. So you may have encountered a similar situation earlier in the last video when you try to access a particular form in the document using numbers. Like we were using there, we were writing there, we were doing is we were accessing a particular form. So this will give an error, right? Save it, and here you can see it says undefined as well. So this is the problem. This is because the document object model is still not ready. So we can tackle this problem in two ways. We can use the onload method, and the other one is we can use the DOM content load event. So for now, we'll use the onload method because that method is a bit easier than the other one. So what we have to do is we have to create a function in our JS file. So we'll create a function here. Let's say we are creating a function 1s. Fine. And we have the body of the function. So what we are going to do is we are going to cut this from here and we are going to paste it inside the function. Fine. So you can see here we have a function 1s, and now what we are going to do is we are going to call this function from our HTML file, right? So we are going to call this function along with the onload event. So we'll go to a HTML file and we'll write here along with the body tag. We'll use onload method and we'll write here a function name. Fine. So this is our function name 1s. This onload event executes the JavaScript code right after the web page is completely loaded. Save it now, and here you can see we have the output for the querySelector method, or you can see we have the output for the document.forms, right? We have the form present at number 1. So issue is solved now. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove this line from here, and now we'll go back to our querySelector method. So save it again, and here you can see we have the query here right? We have the output as div class equals to left, and then we have id1. So we have this particular element here, right? So this is how we can use the query selector method in JavaScript to access any particular query or to search any particular query. Moving ahead, let's talk about traversing the document object model in JavaScript. In layman terms, traversing refers to crossing or traveling through something, right? In JavaScript, we can traverse a document object model to find some specific element from the document. We know that DOM has a tree-like structure with parent and child nodes, right? Traversing a DOM is important because sometimes we need to locate or modify a particular element, but there may exist a possibility that the code is too long or we don't want to search for that specific element by going through every element present in the document. So that's where we can use the DOM traversing method to find a particular component. So let's understand the concept of root node, parent element and child element. So here in this structure, you can see we have several nodes present, right? So the first node we are going to discuss is the root node. So this HTML tag is actually the root node, which has no parent and it has children's, right? So this HTML tag is also a parent node. Another example for parent node is the body tag. So you can see here we have so many children's along with the body tag. We have h1 div and we have div id equals to div2. We have two div tags. We have an h1 tag, and similarly head is also a parent node as well as a child node. A child node to this HTML and a parent node to title, right? So the HTML tag has two children which are head and body. The head is the first child and the body is the last one. Here you can see we have the h1 tag, and this h1 tag is the child node of body tag. So these all are the child nodes. We have h1 div and then we have another div and title. They all are the child nodes. Similarly, these div elements are also parent elements to these two child elements, right? The document object model in JavaScript can be traversed in two different directions, either in downward direction or in upwards direction. It's not necessary that traversing the DOM should start from the beginning or from the end. We can begin traversing from wherever we want, and it can be random. All we need to know before starting is the class name, or we can say element name or something like that related to that particular element which we want to find. So traversing downwards means we want to find the element while coming towards the downward direction. So we have two different methods in JavaScript to traverse the DOM downwards. So we can either use the querySelector method, which we came across moments ago. The other one is we can use the children property, so which helps us in find the direct descendants of an element. So let's move ahead and take a look at both these methods with the help of examples. Till now we were using document.querySelector method to find something in our document, right? Now we will use querySelector along with the variable name to find a specific element inside a parent element. So let's do one thing. We'll go to our HTML file, and what we'll do, we'll give this div tag a class. So let's say we are using a class here and the class name is container. We didn't define this class as of now, but we are using this class for this particular div tag. Fine. Now we want to find a particular element inside this particular div tag. For that we have to take two variables, right? So we'll go back to our JavaScript file and we'll remove this code. We'll take two variables, let's say var x and we have var y. Fine. So for var x we'll use the document dot query selector method and we'll write here the class name. So the class name for the parent div is container, right? And for variable y we'll write here x dot query selector. So one thing you might have noticed here is we have used the variable name, right? So we are looking for a particular element inside this particular div tag. So we have identified this div tag with the help of class name. So the class name is container, and now we are looking for a particular element inside this div tag. So let's say we want to find the element with classes right here. So we'll write here dot right. So this is our class name. Next up, we are going to print the element on a console. So we'll write here console.log y, and when we save it, you can see here we have the first element with class right. So we have this div tag here inside which it is written that this is section 2. So you can see here we have the first element present with the class right. So this method so far has helped us in traversing the DOM in a downward direction. Firstly, we found a parent node and then we started looking for the child node in a downward direction from that element. So with the help of this method, we can find any element present within an element in the tree-like hierarchy. So if we use this method for body tag and then we want to find the element with class right, although the element with the class right is not a direct descendant of the body tag, right? So if we go back to our HTML page, so you can see here if we are using any class here inside the body tag and we want to find the element with class right, so we can see this is not a direct descendant of body tag. Instead, it is a direct descendant of this particular div tag, right? So we can still find it with the help of this querySelector method. But what if we want to see the direct descendant to a particular node? So for that, we can use children property in JavaScript. So we can see here that this particular div tag has 5 different sections present within it, right? So we have this div tag and then we have 5 different div tags basically. So you can see this is section 1, 2, 3, then 4, and lastly 5. So we'll try to access these 5 elements now with the help of children property. So for that, we'll go back to our JavaScript file and we'll write in our JavaScript file. We'll copy this statement from here and we'll write it in another line so that it won't create any confusion to you guys. So what we have to do here is we have to remove this from here and we have to find the children of X. So what's there inside X? We have the div tag, the parent div tag inside this X, right? And we want to find the children of this div tag. So we'll save it and you can see we have an HTML collection of 7 length. And you can see here the length has 7 and we have all the elements here. We have div 1 and then we have div 2, 3, 4, 5 and then we have form and image as well, because form and image is also present inside this particular div tag. So we have all the elements present here of this particular parent div tag. This children property returns the elements only. If we write here instead of children, if we write here child nodes, so let's do it and check the output first. So we have written here child nodes, save it, and here you can see it returns a node list of 15 elements, right? But one thing to notice here is this text is printed almost after every element, right? So you can see text here, then we have text here, then we have text here, and we have text almost after every element, right? Why so? Because this method also publishes the new line. So suppose if we are using the new line, if we are using a new line in our code, it will publish that as well. And let's suppose we want to write a comment over here. So let's go here to our HTML file and write a comment over here. So where we'll write the comment, we'll write the comment here. Fine. So we'll write a comment here. So let's say we'll write here, this is a comment. Fine. So we have commented this line and save it. So you can see the size changed to 17, right? Because it says there are 2 more lines added to our code. So you can, if you see here, you can see here we have a comment here as well, and we have a text added here as well because of this new line. So it will take this as a new line and it will print it as text. So this is how the child nodes is different from the children. So if we want to compare them side by side, what we can do is we'll write here console.log and we'll print x.children. Fine. So save it, and here you can see we have a node list of 17 elements and a HTML collection of 7 elements. The difference is the children property focuses on elements only, whereas the child nodes property will print everything inside a node. Next up, we can access a particular element from the list of all children's. So the syntax will be the same as for forms. If you remember from the previous videos, we can access any form from the HTML file by using numbers, right? Form presented number 1 will be treated as forms 0 and then so on and so on. So we'll write here, let's say children at number 4. So save it. And you can see here we have the output as this is section 5. So we don't know. So let's do one thing. We'll copy this line and we'll paste it here. We'll print the children's as well basically. Save it. And here you can see we have all the children's here. So this particular statement will print the element present at number 4. So you can see here we have this div tag here with class as center. So it will be printed in a console. So you can see here it says this is section 5. Fine. Similarly, just like we have the children and child nodes property, we have few more properties here. We have the first child, first element child, last child and last element child properties, which returns the first and last child and elements. So let's use them as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove this. We are going to write here console.log and x.firstChild. Fine, copy this and we'll paste it again and again. So the next one is first element child, and then we have last child, and finally we have last element child. Fine, so we are good to go. The first child, then we have first element child, then we have last child and last element child. Save it. And here you can see the first one says text and the third one says text, and the other two are presenting the elements present at number 1 and present at number last. So the first child and last child properties works on the child node property, and it returns the first and last child according to the property only. The first element child and last element child property works on the children property. So we know the difference. The children property focuses on elements only, whereas the child node property shows everything inside that nodes, right? So that's why the output here is text for first child and last child, and for first element child and last element childs we have two different elements present here, right? We have an image element and the div element. We can also count the number of child elements present within a single node. We have to use the child element count property for doing so. So let's use it as well, and we'll write here console.log and we'll write here x.child element count. Fine, save it, and we have the output here as 7. This property is also working on the basis of children property. Fine, so you can see here we have the length as 7. As we have seen earlier, while using the children property, the length is 7 there as well. Like we can find the child element of a particular node, we can also find the parent element. So the syntax remains the same, and we have to use the parent element property to find the parent of any element. So what we are going to do is we are going to find the parent of this particular div tag. We have the parent div tag, right, with class container. So we are going to find the parent for this particular div tag. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here console.log and x.parent element. So save it, and here you can see we have the parent as the body tag here. Here you can see we have body, onload, and then we have function name, and whatever is there inside the body tag, we have it all here. Fine. So this line gave us the parent element of this particular div tag with class container. Now we can use this method to find the parent of any element, or we can use the parent node property as well. The output will remain the same in both cases because any child node in the document can have one parent only, right? So this is known as traversing in upward direction. Now, before we end this video, let me guys take you through another concept in this particular topic. We can also access the siblings of a specific element. So like a parent, div here has so many children, right? We have 5 children for the div tag, not 5, we have 6, and then we have 7 children. So because we have 7 tags present here inside the div tag, inside this particular div tag, right? So we can access the siblings of a particular child. Let's suppose if we want to access the siblings of this particular child, right? We want to access the siblings. So the siblings are, the immediate left sibling will be this one, and the immediate next sibling or the right sibling will be this one. So what we have to do to access the siblings of these elements is we have to write here, instead of document.querySelector, we have to write here center, right? Because we want to access the siblings of this particular div tag, right? So what we'll do next is we'll write here console.log, and then we have to write here x.next element sibling for the next one, and we have to write here console.log x.previous. So we can find the previous element sibling as well. And now what we have to do is save it, and here you can see we have two different div tags present here, one with class left and the other one is one with class right. So if we go back to our HTML file, we can see here we have the div with class left as the next element present to this particular element, and the div with class right as the previous element of this particular element with class center, right? So I hope you guys understood this. So that's all for this video, guys. See you in the next one, where we will go through how to take inputs from the user with the help of text boxes. So if you liked this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you have any doubts, do let us know in the comments below. Share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe SimpliCode. Thank you.